Good morning, Amber.
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you
How are
so
you?
much for inviting me to participate in your program.
Not at all. Thank you for joining me. We've had so many interesting conversations over the last while, and I just really felt that, excuse me, a lot of what we've talked about would be really brilliant for people to hear, particularly at this time.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Amber, I know you're in Gibraltar. So, how's the weather over there?
Well, it's mixed at the moment. We've had a few lovely sunny days, but it's a bit patchy today. So it makes it easier to be indoors, doesn't it, when the weather's not so great?
Absolutely. We have a rare, really, really sunny day out here in Ireland at the moment, and just checked the forecast, so it's going to be sunny all day. So, and of course, we're back to school today, homeschooling. So that won't please them when the weather's good. So, you are a family lawyer.
That's right. Yeah.
But I know you're a family lawyer with a bit of a difference.
That's right. Yes, I qualified 20 plus years ago, so now I'm showing.
You must have been only 5 at the time.
Oh yes, only 5, and it's been quite a journey for me, to be honest. For the last 20 years, I've also been very much involved in working with charities and also very interested in Raj Yoga. And I've also had a very values-based practice. And what I found was that working within the adversarial court system, because I'm trained as a barrister, was becoming really hard for me, and it was hard for my clients. So I felt that families and children did not belong in courtrooms. In fact, it's something I still stand by. I don't believe families and children belong in courtrooms. They haven't committed any crimes, or at least outside the context, obviously, of domestic violence. And I just wanted to create a different model, a different way, a different approach, something that would be less stressful, cause less anxiety, less depression. I'd met people who came into my chambers whose lives had completely crumbled, and they were at a state even of having suicidal thoughts. And I thought, the kind of pressure, if you add to that situation even more pressure of courtroom attendances, of being surrounded by people like other lawyers cross-examining them, or judges asking questions of them, just the thought of that, let alone the experience of that, was going to add another layer of stress and anxiety. So I thought to myself, there has to be a different way. There has to be a different way. And if there isn't within the adversarial court system, then I have to create something new. And I called it holistic law. So as we've spoken about this before, holistic law basically for me is seeing the person as a whole, seeing them as not just the legal problem, but seeing, or divided or separate from the legal problem, but seeing the person as somebody who's got personal underlying issues that may have led to the legal problem arising, or there's been a legal problem that has then had the consequent effect of causing the person stress.
Right.
So for instance, an example would be if somebody, let's say, has had a traffic accident, and because of that traffic accident, they've lost their mobility, they may have lost their job, they may have lost their home, and they may have lost their marriage.
Right.
So that is quite a lot to happen to somebody, literally boom, overnight, yeah? So maybe one day everything was fine, and the next moment, boom, you have an accident. Following that, it literally unlocks a chain of events, which keeps people in a downward spiral of emotion, and then, of course, removes them from what I call well-being.
Yeah, which, of course, is actually happening at the moment. We're recording this during COVID lockdown. We are entering our 6th week of lockdown in Ireland. Excuse me. And from what I understand, I read, very kind of, upsetting article recently, which was saying that obviously domestic abuse has gone up by 50%, which is a huge number here in Ireland. I don't know what it is generally around the world. I was listening to Trevor Noah, who was putting a bit of a comedy spin on it, but he was saying in New York, divorce lawyers are flat out because people are contacting them to say, they want out of this marriage. So they're separating whilst being stuck in the home together, and that must be pretty difficult. But I know we before we started the recording, we did want to just really make sure that there's a caveat around, what we're talking about this morning.
Yes, the caveat is basically, obviously, I can't give legal advice. Certainly what I would love to do today, though, is to share with your viewers some of the conversations and some of the questions that I discuss with clients of mine before they embark on separation or divorce. Because another sort of new thing, if you like, or at least new for Gibraltar, that I introduced was with my clients is to make a network of professionals like yourself, who basically life coach, who teach NLP, who teach other tools and techniques to basically support them emotionally before, during, and even after their separation and divorce process. Because it could very well be that there is something going on with them that is impacting the marriage, but it's not actually about the marriage. Yeah. So, so if I can give some examples maybe of some of the questions, some of the conversations I've had with clients in the past to help them get some clarity and to make that decision from a place of peace and calm. And at the moment, as you rightly say, Sarah, I mean, COVID-19 and lockdown is not bringing peace and calm to many people. It is to others, though. So
yeah, I think it's make or break, isn't it? It's going to make or break people, but that's going to be down to the individual and their choices, really. Yeah. No matter how bad things are, we still have a choice in terms of how we deal with them. And obviously, we're not talking about people who are in a domestic abuse situation either.
Right. Well, I would say that definitely we have to look at two categories of situations and of people. And the first, of course, is if there's any form of physical violence or of mental or emotional abuse, which are different to physical violence, or even financial abuse, which is something which is also sometimes overlooked. I would say seek sources of support immediately. Contact your nearest social services, police station, contact a friend, contact a relative, a neighbor, reach out to get the support that you're going to need to leave that situation safely. COVID or no COVID, you need to get out, and you need to get out.
It is safety first at the end of the day.
Safety first, absolutely, especially in relationships where there might be a narcissist or a personality disorder present, or extreme violence. So certainly, and especially also when there's children in the household. So certainly I would say that the conversation that we're going to have about whether to leave or whether to stay or to get clarity does not apply to situations of domestic abuse. No, I would just say get out, because wherever there's abuse, there's no love.
Yeah.
And there's the absence of love, there's the absence of health, there's the absence of respect, of trust, of all the gamut of value system.
And I read a great quote which said, love is not something you have, love is something you do.
Exactly.
And if people are not behaving in that loving manner, then they can say, you know, whatever they like, but the reality is it is about actions. And I was even thinking this morning before, you know, I knew we were talking, and I had this sort of idea in my head of, you know, two things that are completely opposite cannot exist at the same time. So you can't have impatience and anger and aggression and kindness at the same time.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
You know, so if we focus on kind of looking at, well, what's missing that way, and it is very, very severe, then obviously people do need to get the help wherever they can from their support network around them. Now, that's not what this is about. What we want to talk about is, so there was a hilarious scene in Trevor Noah's little clip, and it was a woman trying to work at her laptop in her very cramped New York apartment, and a husband who's in furlough walking around in his dressing gown and his underwear in full shot of her business video. You know, and he's driving her nuts because he's off work, he's in furlough, she's still trying to work. And it was just those irritations and things like that. So that's really where the focus is today.
Okay. So, well, basically, as we were just saying, if you're in an abusive relationship, just to recap, get safe, get support, get out. And secondly, contact people like yourself and other people for sources of support, emotional and mental support. And so of course, that's urgent, right? That's get on with it. If there's no abuse in the relationship, and it's just a matter of, oh my goodness, I'm climbing the walls, we're getting on each other's nerves, can't put up with this, we're having more and more arguments, I think that the first thing we need to do is what your program suggests, which is to breathe. Just take a moment and breathe. close your eyes and just breathe and just be, because there's no real urgency in those kind of situations. You might be feeling unhappy and upset and frustrated, but there's no real urgency. And as I tell a lot of my clients, I say, look, there's no race, there's no finish line we need to get to. What we do need to get to is a place of clarity.
Yeah.
And again, especially if there's children involved, Sarah, because I say this because I remember telling my clients, you want to be able to look into your children's eyes and tell them we did everything we could to explore whether we could make this work. And, if you can say that with your hand on your heart, and with love for the other person, because just because you no longer may be in love doesn't mean that you don't love that person. But maybe there's been a shift and, and the feelings have slightly changed, but there's still love. So if you can say that to your child, then you can leave, and it's a clean break emotionally. It's a clean break. So I would say first thing is breathe. Second thing is let's have a think here about whether these thoughts and feelings were present before COVID lockdown. Were these feelings and thoughts that you had, and that was kind of the way that the path that you were going down, or is this something that's been created during the lockdown? So I think we need that distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you said to me that really made a lot of sense is take COVID-19 out of the equation. As a family lawyer, you know that the peak times that people actually go in and start really investigating divorce is after they've spent a lot of time together.
That's right. Sadly, I'm not sure whether the same patterns apply across the globe, but I do know that in quite a number of different jurisdictions, unfortunately, the peak times for separation and divorce are after the summer holidays, and they're also during the Christmas and New Year period. Christmas and New Year I can understand even more, because it's almost like, we all sign up to the New Year's resolutions, list. And this idea of, I can't possibly think of going into another new year living the way I'm living now. I'm unhappy, I'm unsettled, I'm frustrated, and I want to change. So
or it might be January because they've said we don't want to spoil the kids' Christmas.
Yeah.
So that's when we'll go.
A lot of drinking, a lot of office parties, and then things can get a bit messy. So it's fair enough. So we've spent extra time or more time with the family. So I would say that some tools which are good to do is self-reflection and looking at what is my current state of mind. So is my current state of mind in COVID now one of fear, one of worry? Have I lost my job? Has my partner lost his or her job? Am I concerned about the future? What is my current state of mind? And also, am my feelings constant about this decision, or are they changing? Because I don't know about you, but I've certainly found myself in COVID feeling, in the lockdown, feeling like one day I'm high, another day I'm a bit lower. Some days I'm much more productive. Other days I'm watching the news and seeing how many people have passed away and how many people have lost loved ones, and I start getting highly emotional and really.
Oh, it is without a shadow of a doubt an emotional roller coaster. And it is just the level of uncertainty as well, that there's not only is there the sadness and there's the stress and everything else. It's actually it was almost the thing of, at the beginning of this, I felt like, okay, if you just tell me how long I have to do this for, I'll be fine. I can cope. At least I have in my, again, we were talking about the finishing line. It's like, if I know where the finishing line is, then I'll be okay. Whereas we have absolutely no idea where the finishing line for this is. So there's this constant, every day, you might watch the news and think there might be some good news, and it might not come. It might come with, we last week were told you have another 3 weeks to go. Yeah. Of the more sort of severe restraint. And again, there's that thing of watching other countries, and we're not knowing, who's doing what is the right way. So there's so much uncertainty. It is going to mess with people's emotions without a shadow of a doubt.
So absolutely. So I think that what's important is trying to, and it's not easy, but it's doable, is to try and separate what I call the internal stresses and the external stresses.
Yeah.
Yourself and your mindset and on your feelings and on your intuition and so on. So also stop the busyness, because one thing is really interesting. So again, different people have treated lockdown in different ways. So some people are thinking, oh, this is a retreat. This is a sabbatical period. This is a period of creativity. Of course, pushing aside this, again, the sadness and the compassion for what's going on with the people who are suffering. But if you're within your own home and your own environment, you can say, well, I'll take a positive outlook. I'll make the best of what is a bad situation. And couples may come together. And I think there'll probably, as well as being a queue for divorce courts, there may be a baby boom coming as well.
I have to say, I immediately thought that. I wonder how many babies are going to be born at the end of this year.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you see, it's what is being heightened. But what's important again is to find out, okay, so where are these stresses coming from? Is it internal? Is it external? And I also sometimes ask clients, okay, so we need to try and work out, is this a road bump on the road of your marriage, or are you like literally cliffhanging? And this is a very different thing. So when I say like stop the busyness, it's because even within lockdown, at least I myself found a way to keep busy every single day, fill in all the hours. So many people have been so generous, like yourself, and giving online teaching programs and offering all these other sort of one-to-ones and so on. So it's very easy to fill up our diary. And then we're not really, although this is very interesting, because although some of us like myself are on my own, I'm not really sitting with me. Yeah. Unless I make the conscious effort every day to say, am I connecting with me? Or am I going out, online program, read a book, learn a new language, as you were saying earlier, and all this pressure to come out of COVID lockdown 20 kilos lighter.
Evolved like a butterfly, like we're all cocooned ourselves.
Keeping body sorted, all this. So I think that it's really important to reconnect. And when I say reconnect, it's because, again, in the business of life, outside COVID, within the lockdown, we disconnect with our intuition. And our intuition is our compass. It's our compass that will guide us into what are the right decisions for you and for your family. So one thing which is very simple to do is, again, just close your eyes and imagine your life without your partner. If you're thinking of separating or divorce, go for it. Really, just take yourself down that journey within and see how your body responds to that feeling. Are you feeling panicky? Are you feeling lighter? Are you feeling a heaviness? Are you feeling a sadness? Because as soon as you imagine that, but you need to imagine it like kind of that's it, like he's gone or she's gone and it's over, it's completely and totally over. And just see how that feels. And also I think that some questions we need to ask ourselves is like, under the layer of those thoughts and those feelings and those emotions, why don't we just retrace and go back to the beginning? And this is a lovely exercise which I think came up in one of the recent films about divorce that came up, and it was great. It says, I think the beginning of the film, the couple are asked to go to mediator, and the mediator asks each one of them to write a letter to the other to say, why did I fall in love with you?
Wow, okay.
And it's a really powerful exercise I would invite your viewers to undertake. I mean, we're in lockdown, no excuse. You can take half an hour to sit with a note and okay,
time excuse.
And I think it's important because there was a point in time, obviously, when you were in love and, everything was beautiful and joyful and happy, and you were, having, intimate relations every day or 3 times a day or whatever it was. And so, of course, there's a reason why, to begin with, we're talking about healthy relationships again, obviously. You decided to be with this person, you committed to this person. So writing that letter of what were the reasons, and was it because of the way he made or she made you laugh, or shared hobbies, shared life vision, goals, values? What is it, or what was it about that person that you've decided to commit with at that point in time that you fell in love with? Then, of course, you want to discuss in your mind, okay, what's changed since then? What changed? And many things change during life, because life, if there's any constant in life, is that there is change. And it could be children have come into the equation. There's been a promotion, which means that one of you is away from the home more hours than they used to be, or there might have been a job loss, which has put financial strain on the relationship. There could have been an illness, cancer, or an accident, or an injury, or any other external stressor, what I call external stresses now. So if you can see that, for example, I mean, in some of the divorces that my clients have avoided to coming to Anne Law, because we discuss, you know, what's happened. Is this an internal or external stress? And you know, let's try and pinpoint. We found out that one of my clients was suffering from postnatal depression.
Yeah.
So it was something that she hadn't even thought of, and neither had her partner. So we think, well, this obviously is temporary. This is a temporary situation. You know, you've got a newborn. That's a lot of pressure. It's a big life change. It doesn't mean your marriage is over necessarily. It just means that you have needs that need to be met. And let's discuss then how those needs can be met and supported. And you know, I always tell my clients, I'm going to be here, hopefully, for the next 6 weeks, the next 6 months. So go away, try this, contact such and such a person. As I say, I work with a network of amazing holistic practitioners, psychologists and therapists and so on. And I say, get the support you need. If after that process, you still are of the same view and you still want to continue with the separation and divorce, then great, we'll just get on with it. But let's look at that. And then also looking at, going back to the letter, is sort of, am I truly acknowledging and seeing my partner for who they are? And with that, I'd like to tie in gratitude. Because I think that one of the greatest reasons, or one of the most popular reasons why relationships break down, is because people take each other for granted very quickly. And it's sad because, you know, it's almost like, in every relationship, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, and there's going to be what we call wins. Do we celebrate our wins? Do we celebrate each other's wins? When, you know, when something's going well, do you take that time to have that bubble bath and to have that candlelight dinner? Do you have a date night? Do you keep a weekend free each month, free of kids even, just to have a romantic getaway and leave the kids with the in-laws?
Keep the connection alive, really, at the end of the day.
And keep investing. And so, you know, but this is all about commitment, Sarah, as you know, and so it's also, am I truly committed? But committed from mind and word and action, and in my soul, am I truly committed to this relationship? And if so, you know, great. And is it the other person maybe who's not investing the energy? So the question again is, how much quality time, how much energy am I investing into this relationship?
Well, I know John Gottman, who's an amazing expert in the field of relationships, he talks about the relationship bank account.
Oh, I love that.
You know, are you making deposits in terms of kindness and consideration and that spending that time and that putting that energy into it, or are you always withdrawing? Is it always about, you know, you're looking for your needs to be met, but you're not reciprocating? So it's always about, you know, you're taking for granted. It's a withdrawal, you know, not saying thank you, not appreciating something. That's a withdrawal, you know, not paying attention. He has what he calls in relationships, you know, bids. So people make a bid for attention, you know, so if they're saying, you know, someone touches someone on the arm, it's a bid for connection rather than attention. Attention always sounds very negative, doesn't it? But it's a bid for connection. You know, to say, you know, how was your day? It's a bid for connection. You know, that we make these bids throughout the day, and the more those bids are ignored, again, what's happening is there's these withdrawals that are coming out of the relationship bank account. So you really want to stay in the black as much as possible and not end up in the red, because that's where people feel very, very dissatisfied. And we talked as well about, if you have children, you know, there are 4 kind of main areas. There's the financial, which obviously at the moment could be extremely stressful for people, even if they're continuing to work. The pressure to maintain that job whilst at home with kids. I'm very lucky. I have a house that's external. I have an office external to the house. So if they're killing each other over there, it's okay, you can't hear it. But I've been on so many calls where the kids are coming in, and you can see these. Some of them are absolutely hilarious, you know, but some of them it's very, very stressful to have that conscious, you know, awareness that, oh, someone could be coming in. I could be disturbed at any moment. You know, so we've got the financial area. We've got the division of labor.
Yes. Oh, that's one of my favorites, because it actually is what again tends to come up again and again. It's even come up with my own personal relationships, to be honest. And
who's carrying the weight of, and then 2 other areas would be the intimacy and the children. But yeah, so division of labor.
Division of labor. Let's go with that. as Tony Robbins says, where your focus goes, energy flows. And so what are we focusing on? And I remember that years ago, I was starting out as a young barrister. And I had a client come in and he started complaining, oh, my wife this, my wife that, and I want to separate and I want to divorce and so on and so forth. And I knew him personally. I knew that he was an avid golfer. And so I just listened to him for a while. And then I asked him, I said, if you want to be a pro at golf, what do you need to do? And he looked at me and I said, no, I'm serious. I said, well, what is it you need to do to become a pro? And he was saying, well, I need to invest a lot of time, practice, a ton of energy, not giving up, where at the first sign of failure, no, you got to get up and get on with it, And I said, well, relationships are no different. Yes. Relationships are no different. So if you want to be a pro husband or a pro partner, you need to do the exact same thing. And of course, this applies to women too. So you'd say, invest time and attention, invest energy, practice, and never give up, right? So I remember I used to say to him, so how much time, of your week between, you had a timetable, which is another good exercise to do, to get a timetable of 7 days, Monday through to Sunday. And I basically put slots of time, as you would, in your diary, and work out how many blocks of time are you giving, as you were saying before, bidding, to your partner. And I mean quality time, because I remember having the conversation with the same gentleman, and he said, oh, I do sit down for meals with my wife. And I said, well, what meals that she prepared on her own? And you just didn't eat with her, but what about preparation time, chatting to her, offering her a glass of wine or apple juice or whatever it is, and, just having a chat.
Wine.
Yeah, just keep the wine. So, what about, as you were saying before, the connection and quality time. So the your partner feels supported, held, listened to, loved and nurtured. And also, what about team spirit? Yeah, because again, in any sport, team spirit is essential. If somebody hogs the ball in basketball, then it's a disaster, isn't it? You need to team play. And so the amount of energy you're going to have together it's just common sense, isn't it? If both of you are coming into your chores, into your household chores together as a team, then obviously you're going to finish your chores earlier. Both of you are going to be less tired. There'll be more energy for fun.
Less resentful that one person feels that they're carrying the weight of the whole thing.
Absolutely. And when you say resentful, a quote comes up for me, which is from the Bible, actually. I like getting quotes from all sorts of places. And this one's from the Bible. And I remember reading it out at a wedding, because I used to get asked sometimes when I was young to speak at weddings for friends and so on. And it says, love is not a record of wrongs. It's from Corinthians, I think. And so it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, come on, we've all done it. You start your relationship really well, then you're banking, oh, he didn't do this, or he didn't do that, or I should have done this, or he should have said that. And of course, it's 2020, and you're having an argument on the 1st of April, and the next thing you know, what happened in 1996 and 2004 and 2010 comes up.
So that reminds me of a joke. So these two gentlemen are chatting, and one says, I really hate arguing with my wife because she always gets really hysterical. And the other one says, you're lucky, mine gets historical.
So again, but that's a whole other conversation, isn't it, about acceptance, forgiveness, compassion and kindness, as you mentioned earlier. And it's a responsibility of both partners. It really is a responsibility of the two. And of course, as you're saying earlier, like if you have a poor investment of energy, a poor investment of time into home, into work, into the homework and children balance, if you like, of course the relationship's going to suffer. It's just common sense.
It's quite interesting because I've worked with a lot of high-level executives who, male and female, who have invested a lot of time and energy into their work to get obviously to where they've got to. And I think one of the things that is a miss, is a bit of a holy grail, I think, that people try to find, is work-life balance.
Yeah.
And for me, that it's just life. Work is a part of life, and we spend more time at work, and unless you're in education, but those two areas tend to be where we are, well, spending generally out of COVID-19 the most amount of time. Yeah. So it's not about actually having an equal split of time across the areas. And I'm happy to put this up here underneath, is instead of having a wheel of life where all the pieces are the same size, is you actually have a pie chart where people look at a little bit like your timetable. So it's looking at what percentage of your week is spent where.
Yeah.
But that's not the end of the story. Then you look at each area and go, what's your satisfaction rating? Because you might spend 50% of your time at work, but you love your job. It's your passion. It gives you your significance. It makes you feel great. It's your creativity. Or, all those things, are satisfied within the job. So maybe it's an 8 out of 10. Or you might have 50% of your time is actually at home with the kids, and the rating is a 2 out of 10. Because it's one argument after the other. There's a lot of conflict going on. And if there's conflict, I would say people are going head to head. It's who's right. We're trying to use our minds to have an argument and to put our view of the world onto the other person and to convince the other person that our point of view is correct. When I say actually in families and in relationships, you have to go heart to heart. It is very much about how do you actually create those. Connection doesn't happen from here. It happens from here. And a lot of people are not really connected with themselves first, which is exactly what you were saying, that thing of take a breath, stop being so busy, just for a moment, just check in. Are you even connected with yourself? Do you understand yourself? Are you being compassionate with yourself? Because if you can't do it for yourself, how can you possibly do it for somebody else? And if you're expecting it, if you're not doing it for yourself and you're expecting it from someone else, that's not going to work either.
That's right. And I think that something that's very important is that I know it's going to sound super cheesy and super cliche, but it is a truth. If you do not know how to love yourself, it is very difficult to maintain a loving relationship with someone else. And for example, if we have high expectations of ourselves, and if we are highly judgmental about ourselves and highly critical about ourselves, any mistake we make, we're remunerating about it and sort of going over and rethinking and overthinking, the likelihood is that we'll project that kind of level of expectation on others around us. And sometimes it's just too much pressure. So I think that again, as you're saying, like self-compassion is a huge tool to learn. And it does take time, and it does take energy, and it does take effort, and sometimes external support of a life coach or somebody who can teach.
The first step is always awareness.
Awareness, yeah, absolutely.
Just to sit with yourself and go, okay, where for yourself are you not looking after yourself?
Exactly. I mean, you mentioned before the bid sort of game and so on. I have something that a little sort of game I do with my clients, which I call "How Full Are Your 5 Buckets?" So basically, the 5 buckets are the first one is the physical, the next is the mental, then you have the emotional, then you have the financial and the spiritual, for those who believe in the spiritual connection and the soul connection. And so it's actually 3 questions, not 2, because the first is like, what support am I giving my partner? How much am I filling? How much water am I pouring into those buckets in support of my partner? Then you can look at how much is your partner filling your bucket. But the really important one is one we've just been talking about, which is how much do I fill my own bucket in those 5 areas? Because nobody, as you know, and again, it's going to sound cliche, but no one is responsible for your happiness, only you. Only you can decide and choose happiness. Nobody can make you happy unless you yourself are committed.
And I think Hollywood and fairy tales have an awful lot to answer for.
Oh yeah, the happy ending. I'm still waiting for them.
They ride off into the sunset together, and then the reality is, they should then have part 2, which is because what's really interesting is the research has shown that love is genuinely blind. The chemicals that we experience that are released into the body when we first meet somebody,
oxytocin, yeah.
But those chemicals actually make us blind to anyone else's false. Someone can tell you something, you're like, no, 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 this is, you know, it just
all that.
in and out the other, you know, this is different and everything else. And the reality is, once those chemicals actually come back to a normal level and life starts to get to sort of some sort of routine and normality, obviously what we couldn't see at the beginning then becomes obvious. And I think looking at those 4 areas, you can have 3 areas that could be fantastic. You can have great financial security, you know, great intimacy, you know, and division of chores is fine. I have a solution. I have someone to come and do my housework for me, although not at the moment. So that's interesting because we're having to enroll the kids as well and get them involved. And it's everybody's house. It's not just one person's job. But maybe there's parenting issues. There's you know, we're all brought up differently. The scary thing is that I open my mouth and one of my parents comes out. And that's inevitable. You know, we're all a product of our upbringing and those value systems that we grew up with. And so it would be very unusual, really, to have 2 people completely on the same page as that. And that doesn't mean that the marriage is over. It just means you have to look at that area and discuss and talk about things in rather than a blame way, to look at, okay, one of the things I always suggest to my clients is look at the difference between the impact your actions and your words are having, and what was your intention. Was your intention to upset the other person? No. Was the intention to have a massive row and then one of you sleeping on the couch? No. You know, if the intention, and I don't just mean, oh, to be right and to get that person to change. It's like, okay, sorry, my internet drops out, so yeah, we have a little pause. The intention would be very much about, okay, it's for that person to really understand what I'm saying. You go, well, if there was a row, then that didn't happen. And I talk a lot about emotions, and emotions are something that are fleeting. They're not consistent. As you were saying, it's like, you know, you can wake up in a great mood at the moment, or you can wake up and feel very sad, or you can wake up and feel quite angry, you know, and we're all, so those emotions are not constant. There's no such thing as a constant emotion, otherwise we'd be casted off by the men in the white coats. It's not physically possible, but emotions they all serve a purpose, and we use emotions for an intention. And I always say there's 2 intentions. If you're feeling something, let's say an emergency or a not so positive emotion, and there's no one else around, that's for you to pay attention to something inside of you. If you're feeling it when there's someone else around, the intention is to get their attention. And one of the things that's the simplest things to do, and I often recommend this to parents with their children, is just to validate somebody else's emotion. Don't try and fix it. Don't try and change it. Don't ignore it. Don't try and suppress it. Just acknowledge that you see that this person is feeling upset, that they're feeling angry, that they're feeling hurt. You just acknowledge it. And it's so interesting. It's always that thing of, okay, people are not going out to work and coming back in as much anymore, but imagine there's a couple. And let's be stereotypical. And as a man comes in from work and, you know, he's had a really tough day and everything else, and he walks in the door and, you know, he's exhausted. And he says, oh, I had a really tough day. And the woman has also been at work, but she had to get home early because one of the kids was sick and the school called her, and she had to cancel important meetings and go to the doctors and get dinner ready, and goes, you think you've had a bad day? You wait and hear what kind of day I've had. And so begins the who's having the worst life competition. And no one is hurt. Whereas it's about, you know, again, that kind of investing that time and that energy, and just by saying, wow, I can see you've had a really tough day. Don't try and fix it. Don't try and change it. Don't offer advice. Don't say, well, you should be doing this. I mean, the word should be taken out of the dictionary anyway, because the minute it comes into conversation, it's a judgment call.
Judgment call, yeah.
You know, and just even by just that very simple, and it's amazing because the minute that an emotion has been acknowledged, it disappears. It's done its job. It has got the attention of it, and therefore it disappears. And now you can communicate.
One thing I love about Swami Satchidananda, Gurudev, is that he has this short talk about relationships, and he says, you know, are you in a relationship of selfless service to the other, or is it a business contract?
Yeah.
And that kind of came to mind immediately. You said, you know, what you just did about this being like some sort of a competition, oh, you are tired, well, I'm more tired, and you had a rough day, well, my day was worse, and da, 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 da. Because in a sense, where are we coming from? And I always believe that all our decisions as well come from one of two places. It can only come from one of two places, either a place of fear or a place of love.
Yeah.
And so when you're with your partner in dialogue or in communication, what are you communicating? And if it's, you know, as you say, if somebody comes home and says, I'm tired, I've had a rough day, or da da da, if what you're holding for that person, if you're holding the space for that person in the place of love and kindness and compassion, you'll listen and you'll acknowledge, as you just said, yeah. But if it's a place of fear, and if it's a place of uncertainty and of hurt, or then it becomes ego. It comes really from a place of ego, not so much love. And it's like, you know, the battle begins, as you say, and things just spiral out of control. And then you go to bed thinking, well, what happened there? This, as you say, wasn't my intention. But so I think that when we're thinking about separation and divorce, so much needs to be considered first, because you did make a commitment to that person, and you did maybe commit to a family. And I think it's about, as you say, the word awareness is crucial. It's a unfolding a new level of awareness about yourself, and then about your internal stresses and external stresses, looking at what is temporary. COVID is temporary. This too shall pass, as they say. And so what's going on with you now, what's going on with your relationship right now, may just be the road bump. It may not be a road bump. It may be, as I say, you know, a cliffhanger. But so then what requires attention right now? And what are your immediate needs, and how can these be met? And those are the kind of questions. And it may just be something as simple as having an honest conversation with your partner. It may just be something as simple as that. It may be also, I think that some people find it hard to ask for support and to ask for their needs to be met. So some people, I think, get triggered and they start seeking attention in a negative way,
yep,
rather than a positive way. But again, this comes, as you say, down to our childhood, our upbringing, our programming. Have we the tools in our tool set, you know, to be able to communicate and ask? A lot of people will equate asking for help or support as a sign of weakness, which it certainly isn't. It's actually a sign of strength, because it's a recognition. And
yeah, but you're not in this on your own.
No, and it's taking responsibility, and it's taking accountability, and saying, oh, I want to do something to sort this out, and acknowledging that I need this support from you right now, either physically, back to the physical bucket with maybe chores, or mentally, because today, you know, I'm not feeling well, and I'm exhausted, and I just need time out. You know, a few weeks ago, I suggested to a friend of mine, whose child was quite sick, and she hadn't slept, I think it was something like 4 hours in 48 hours. And I just suggested to her, look, as soon as your husband comes home, because he's an essential worker, so as soon as he comes home from work today, although he will be tired, obviously, I said, just take 3-4 hours where you go into a room on your own, and either you sleep or you just close your eyes and you just be and rest, because, you know, we need to refuel, don't we? We need to fill our tank.
Absolutely.
So it's about asking, and she felt guilty asking her partner for that kind of support, because he's out working all day, and, you know, he's also tired. So that's kind of the opposite, isn't it, of what we were talking about before? That is actually going the other extreme.
Being selfless.
Yes, being so selfless that actually we're not refueling our own tanks. And being, I think, self-care, I can't remember where I got this from, it's not mine, but self-care is not selfish. And that's another thing that is, again, stereotypically women feel, that if they look after themselves, it's seen as selfish, and that they ought to be putting everybody else in the household first. And again, you know, from my experience, as I say, with all 20 years of seeing now thousands of couples come through my doors with relationship breakdown issues, I always say to them, no, get the support you need, self-care you need, because if you're well, everything else around you is well. As you know as well, it's like,
oh, it's so true. And I think it's a really important difference as well to make in terms of how you practice family law, and you know, maybe kind of what people would perceive as a more typical kind of approach, which is that nobody can make the decision for you.
That's right.
I think a lot of people go to a professional to say, so whether it's counseling or, you know, relationship coach, or whether it's a solicitor or a barrister, you know, if you've gone down that route at that point, or even the mediator, And there's an expectation that by just giving this kind of snapshot of your life, which is just, it's like looking at you can look at it both ways. You can look at a photo album and everyone's smiling and happy and you go, well, that must be the life. It's like, no, there's everything else in between. But with this expectation that is the expert on your relationship, and that person is going to say to you, oh, this is beyond saving. Yeah, you definitely need, to get out. And I think that decision is such an important decision to make, and nobody has the right to make that decision for you, other than the two people in the relationship. There's no way someone can possibly understand. You just, even with your partner, you don't know what's really going on for them, even if you live with them.
Yeah. I mean,
you're with them all the time. You don't know what's going on inside people's heads.
I would also suggest very strongly, and thank you for saying this, because now you've brought me to something which is essential, and that is, if people do decide to go through separation or the divorce route, I would strongly urge them to go to collaborative lawyers.
Yeah.
Because I've always said to my clients exactly what you've just said, Sarah. Like, once you're in the courtroom, it's like you're disempowered. You've given up your power. You've given up your power to the lawyers. You've given up your power to a judge. Now, the judge, I remember, my clients used to say to me in the morning, because I've given up litigation now 3 years ago because of I felt so strongly about this. So now I help couples through separation and divorce, but I do not litigate. I refuse to.
Well, it's just so damaging. I mean,
yes, it's very damaging.
Really, nobody wins in terms of the relationship. Nobody. The couple don't win. The children don't win.
Well, it's back to what you said before, and I have to emphasize and re-emphasize what you've just said, and it's very crucial that people get this. If you go through the adversarial court system, what you're doing, as I say, is giving up your power to respective lawyers. You are already, from the word go, in entrenched opposite positions.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. There's a line drawn in the center, and you're here. It's almost like a tennis court. The other person's on the other side. Not only that, we're adding Chinese whispers. Because you tell your lawyer to write a letter that says X, Y, Z. The lawyer interprets that through their lens, writes to the other lawyer. Other lawyer receives the letter, interprets the letter through their lens, and then communicates whatever they've interpreted to their client. So by now we have a Chinese whispers scenario, I call it, where what this person intended, going back to intention, may certainly not be the message that is received once it's gone through 3 filters. So not just that once you're in the adversarial system, there's a winner, there's a loser. That's the perception, right? And that's the reality, to be honest. Although it's not even the reality. I always say it's a lose-lose from the word.
Yes. If one person's lost, everybody's lost.
Perception of winning and losing, but actually it's a lose-lose scenario from the word go. So then you also have, I remember as I was saying, that clients used to say to me, Amber, what's going to happen in court today? And I say, it depends on who we have, who's the judge. Because
they have their lens, and they have their value system, and they have their beliefs.
Each different, plus what side of the bed they got up that morning, what's going on with them as a human being.
What's going on in their relationship.
What's going on with their relationships and so on. So there are so many permutations and so many factors, and it's so uncertain. And I also said, sometimes judges are very busy people. They don't have time to read all the papers in the document because they have very busy, tight schedules to keep to. So if they haven't even read the papers, you're asking somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your partner, who has never met your children, who's never spent half an hour in your households, let alone the years that you have together as a family, who doesn't understand the maybe particular dynamics, within that household, or the particular circumstances, or the particular characters and personalities, to make a decision in a court order that is going to tie the whole family down for the foreseeable X number of years, which may make your life hell, a living hell. So, or at least harder, or at least more challenging. So I always say, when I found out about collaborative law, which was not that long ago, because unfortunately we don't have this system in place in Gibraltar yet. But it is something that it started in America and is growing in popularity in the UK. You have a system where the two parties will go to the same law firm. It's a collaborative law firm. Within that law firm, there are 2 lawyers that are then appointed to each one of them, and you sign what's called a participation agreement. And that participation agreement, from the word go, says we agree not to litigate. We agree we're not going down the court route. the court route. And interestingly enough, because I had created this model in 2013 in Gibraltar, thinking I was a very strange fish, and I was on my own in this thinking. I actually created the collaborative law model without knowing about the collaborative law model. The only difference being that, of course, I didn't have other lawyers within the law firm working in this participation agreement. I didn't know about it. But what I did have was the support system, as I say, of the holistic practitioners, the psychologists, the family therapists, and so on. And what collaborative law model does is within the law firm, they will have a divorce coach, they will have, if necessary, a financial advisor, and they will have other external support with it that come into the same room. And so whatever is needed, whatever tool is needed in that particular, for that particular family dynamic is there, and it's readily available. And then you move forward together. And then that means that you remain totally empowered. You remain totally, well, in control, if you like. I don't like using the word control, but in control or empowered, but prefer empowered, right? Empowered to make decisions that will fit you both. And any children that, you know, that are there, that exist and that are around. So if you are going down the separation divorce route, highly recommend to go to collaborative law practice, seek them out. And I think life will be, at least separation divorce will be a very different experience. Because, you know, another thing I'll just share with you is that I remember that when I was in the separation and the divorce court, we might go in and, let's say, ask for a contact order. And let's say my client would win, as I put it. Unless you're taking into account the wishes and feelings of the other side, regardless of whether you have that order, once you've stepped out of the courtroom, it's like you've won the battle and you've lost the war. Because will they comply? Will they not comply? Will things start getting messy? If one person is left out of the equation, this again is why I love calling my practice holistic, because what I'm doing is I'm not just looking at the person in isolation, I'm looking at the partner, looking at the children, even grandparents, even uncles, because a child does not belong to one parent. It belongs to a whole family, in fact, two families that become one big family. So I look at the whole, like, how is everyone affected? As soon as there is somebody who's left out, whose wishes and feelings are not taken into consideration, that means that, let's say, when child is with, let's say, mom's happy because she's just won her court order and everything's hunky-dory, but let's say dad is really upset, didn't get the amount of contact he wanted, so on and so forth. So when the child goes to, or the children go to have contact with the father's not going to be in a good place. And what parents need to realize is if one parent, be it mom or dad, is not in a good place, when the children are with that parent, they're experiencing not in a good place, a situation of not being in a good place. So it's so important that we see everybody in that family as connected, and that we look after the well-being of all, and insofar as is humanly possible, to reach an agreement they can live with, and that we remove this win-lose mentality.
And I think, you know, at the moment, with the situations that people are in, this is an opportunity, without even going to a lawyer, anything else, but to really look at that. How can we take everybody's feelings into account? Yeah. How can everybody be supportive of each other, you know, within the household? If your children are old enough, you know, to bring them into that conversation as well, you know, to really listen to them. I know I work with a lot of youths, and one of my biggest concerns is really how this is affecting them mentally. So that is going, I mean, we've got such an unknown dynamic going on, and it's so out of our control that the only thing we can control is ourselves, and really how we're dealing with this, you know, no matter how stressful it is. It's about coming back to ourselves and really finding that center point. And as you said, to breathe. So Amber, this has been absolutely fascinating, and I really hope people have got a little bit of food for thought, things they can take away. If people want to contact you, we've got some links and some contact details below the video, so if they want to contact you. I know you're in Gibraltar, so you wouldn't be able to represent anybody here in Ireland, or... Oh,
that's not the intention, as I say, because I no longer litigate. So what I practice now is holistic law, and as I say, I'm very happy to share with not only people who are thinking of separation and divorce, but also law students, Lawyers
I
in
was
the
going to say, because one of your aims is to really divest this knowledge and actually get it out there so that more and more solicitors and lawyers can actually start really practicing this way, because the results speak for themselves in terms of the feedback that your clients give you, whether they stay together or not.
yeah.
You know, the way, I mean, you told a wonderful story the other day of a daughter of a couple who, you know, just said to you, actually, because of working with you, even though they did separate her parents, they get on better now than they ever did. And I just think how wonderful, you know, it doesn't have to be this contentious, you know, angry, aggressive way of separating, that you can still separate kindly if that's ultimately the right decision for that couple that they make themselves.
I think I like to call it an intervention. When if you practice holistic law, it's what you're doing really is maybe for the very first time giving this couple a safe space where they can be held and where they can actually almost like press pause, breathe, and start becoming aware. Because unless we stop and unless we breathe and unless we pause whilst we're in our business, it's impossible. But benefits, I mean, it's interesting. When I was working with another law firm, to whom I'm very grateful, because without the experience of working for them and working and serving all these clients, I wouldn't have the experience that then drove me to set up my own model of practice. But I remember that, you know, some of the senior partners weren't too pleased with me when I leave the conference room, really happy, beaming, saying, "Oh, I've just sent these clients off to counseling." And I'd be told, "You just lost clients to the firm. You know, what are you thinking, woman?" But it is a short vision. Really is a short vision, because when people understand that you truly, from the heart, from your soul, are putting their best interests first, and you're keeping not just their best interest, but the best interest of their family at heart, they trust you.
Yeah.
Because they understand that it's not about treating clients as commodities. It's not about treating clients, you know, I call it the barcode, you know, like sort of like, let's just scan the barcode, let's see how much this client is going to bring into the fund in terms of money, of fees, and so on. When they understand that they trust you, and you know what happened, which was totally unexpected, and it wasn't the intention, but what happens is that then they talk to other people, they recommend you, and you end up having, like I did, thankfully, I'm very grateful for this, like waiting lists of clients wanting to work with me. But the other thing that's very interesting is that it also took me on a path of well-being for myself and of healing for myself. And this is something I want to again impart and teach lawyers. Lawyers, very sadly, actually, are a profession where there's a very high incidence of depression. There's a high incidence of not being satisfied with the job they're in, with their career, of low career satisfaction, and also substance abuse, and high levels of suicide. It really happens because of burnout. And what I address again in the holistic way of practicing is well-being, not just for your client, but for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, it doesn't matter what the relationship is, does it? If you don't have that good relationship with yourself, whether it's with your partner, with your children, or with your lawyer, or the lawyer for themselves, then that is going to translate somewhere, doesn't it? It has to come out somewhere, shape.
And there's something I'll say, which has come up for me again, and that is that it's one of my ambitions is to, or goals, if you like, is to ensure that every lawyer, that it becomes compulsory for lawyers to receive counseling. And when I say that, I'm talking about lawyers who are dealing with what I call the street law, with the emotional side of law. So it could be, you know, in the criminal field, in the field of family and children, certainly. Because if you're working as a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, in any of those professions, I understand that you need to keep on having your own counseling sessions, just to work on yourself, to ensure again that you avoid burnout and high levels of stress, like basically coping mechanisms, and importantly that you don't project onto your client what's going on with you.
Absolutely.
But this is not something that is compulsory for family lawyers or criminal lawyers or litigators.
And at the end of the day, you're dealing with people.
You ought to be, absolutely. And the thing is that there is a transference, unless you understand and you're aware about this, there is a transference of the trauma of your client onto you. If you sit down, you know, again, we're talking about where your focus goes, energy flows. And if your focus as a lawyer is a 60, 70-hour week, or more hours than that, because I certainly used to work very long hours, including weekends. If what you're focusing on is negativity, is anger, is stress, anxiety, depression, people who are in conflict, so you're in conflict, your client's in conflict, then you're in conflict with the lawyer on the other side, the adversarial system. Then you're talking about the stress of going to court, the unknowns, which judge do I have this morning? How is he or she feeling? How is this going to go for my client? So when you're adding all of that together, unless you have the tools, again, to learn to cope with that, and not just to cope, but to process what is going on and to discern. When you go home that evening and you're feeling angry suddenly, and you think, why am I feeling angry? Oh, well, I was dealing this morning with a case of domestic violence and the client got very upset. So we need to start taking a breath as well. And lawyers really do need that emotional support. And again, I think it's seen as a weakness, and it is not a weakness. And what we're seeing is, unfortunately, people dropping out of the profession, people burning out of the profession, and as I say, high levels of career dissatisfaction, at least from the UK Law Society statistics. Again, I'm not sure whether this is reflected across the globe, but certainly I know that there's what's called an integrative law movement that was started by J. Kim Wright many years ago, together with other people like David Wexler, who started something called therapeutic jurisprudence. And with, as I say, Stu Webb as well, who started collaborative law and so on. So there is a global recognition that there has to be a change to the way that lawyers work, to the experience for lawyers and judges, and also, obviously, importantly, for their clients.
Fantastic. And I mean, I just have to say hats off to you. And I knew when I first heard you speak, we were at a course together and you stood up and you shared your story. I just immediately went, I have to go and talk to that woman. She sounds extremely sensible and is coming at this from a very different perspective. And we've been friends ever since. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. You have such an amazing wealth of experience. You've got such you can just see the light shining from you in terms of your integrity, and really this does come from the heart. So anyone who wants to know more about what you do, whether they're in a marriage that or a relationship that they want to maybe look at and think differently about, or whether they're going into the legal profession or they already are and they're practicing family law and want to know a little bit about, this resonates with them, that this is going to give them a lot more satisfaction in their jobs. Your details are below. And because we have talked about burnout and looking after yourself, I am actually going to put my own details underneath as well.
This is why I've said this a number of times during our conversation today. People can reach out to you, and it's amazing that the work you do is so life-changing for people in a positive way. And I'm very grateful again for your asking me to be on your program. And I hope that this has been of some value to your viewers.
Me too. So Amber, you take care of yourself, you stay safe, and we will definitely be chatting again soon.
Stay safe and well all. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.